Hi, I'm Chris Sangster, and welcome back to the studio. So a few months ago, I made a video called 5 Missing Features of Logic Pro, and the response was incredible. First of all, thank you so much for watching the video and for engaging in the comments section. The best part about that video is that I got so many comments about other missing features of Logic Pro that I had never even thought of. I learned so much about what this community wants out of Logic Pro that I just had to make this video about the 5 biggest missing features of Logic Pro according to you. The #1 requested feature by a long shot, I got so many comments about this one, is plugin search. And to be honest, never even crossed my mind. I didn't even know it was a thing in other DAWs. I'm just so used to menu diving for plugins at this point, but man, it makes so much sense and it would be a huge time saver. I mean, it takes a good 30 seconds just to scroll through all of my Waves plugins. So for example, in Pro Tools, when you go to load a plugin on a track, right there at the top of the menu, it says search. You click on that and you can search for the name of the plugin you want. It's so simple, it's so genius. I'm embarrassed I never noticed that it was missing from Logic Pro, and it seems like an absolute no-brainer of an addition. I do have a few tips though that can help you out in the meantime while we wait for Apple to get their act together. The first is having your most recently used plugins show up at the top of the plugin menu. To activate this, go to the Logic Pro menu, Settings, and then View. Then navigate to the Mixer tab. In this menu, tick on the box next to Show Recent Plugin List in Plugin Menu. Now, at the very top of your plugin list will be the last 5 plugins that you opened. If you constantly use the same 5 plugins, this can really reduce the amount of time spent menu diving for your plugins. But if you have a bigger selection of most used plugins and you want a little more control over exactly which plugins you can access quickly, you can create a custom favorites folder for the plugins that you use all the time. To do this, go to the Logic Pro menu, Settings, and Plugin Manager. Then next to where it says Category here, click this plus button. This will create a new folder. I suggest naming it with the number 1 first, something like 1-favorites. This way it will show up at the very top of your plugin categories list. This list is automatically arranged in alphabetical order. Then navigate to your favorite plugins in this window. Either select the manufacturer in the list on the bottom left, or just search the name of the plugin in the search bar. Then drag and drop your favorite plugins into your favorites folder. Do note that if the plugins have a separate mono and stereo version like Waves plugins do, you will have to put both versions into the folder separately. Now, when you go to the plugins menu, you will have your favorites folder right at the top, and you can quickly find all of your favorite plugins. The second most requested feature was to make the piano roll in Logic Pro more like the piano roll in FL Studio. So I've never used FL Studio, but according to many commenters, the functionality of the FL Studio piano roll is way more robust than the one in Logic Pro. And I specifically heard about 2 features over and over again. The first is ghost notes. And at first, I didn't really understand what this meant. I thought it had something to do with ghost notes in a drum part, like, those lightly tapped hits before a big hit on a snare. But it's actually much simpler and more useful than that. It's the ability to see the MIDI notes that are in other tracks in the session grayed out behind the MIDI on the track you are currently working on in the piano roll. These are there to use as a reference, but are not directly editable. A common trick in FL Studio, apparently, is to create a block of MIDI notes on all of the scale tones on a guide track, and then have that grayed out in the background of the piano roll so you can always see which notes are in the scale as you create new parts. A very cool concept that would be an amazing addition to Logic Pro. The only way I can think of to kind of approximate this in Logic Pro would be to create this guide track with the scale notes in it and then mute it. Then make the regions in that track a different color then your other MIDI tracks. Then in the piano roll, you can choose View, Set Note Color by Region Color. That way you could visually distinguish the guide track from the tracks you're working on. This would require you to always select the guide track along with the track you want to edit. It also takes away the velocity colors on MIDI notes, and the guide notes would be editable, so you would probably move them by mistake a few times. So it's by no means as useful as the FL Studio feature. Logic also doesn't have a quick scale or chord creator either like FL Studio does, so you would have to set that guide track up manually. It's definitely not the best workaround. The other FL Studio piano roll feature a lot of you brought up is the slide function, which allows you to create pitch slides between MIDI notes right in the piano roll. Again, amazing functionality that Logic should totally implement in what is beginning to look like a much needed overhaul of the piano roll. This feature is right in the piano roll in FL Studio, but the easiest way to emulate it in Logic Pro would be to choose a software instrument plugin that has a glide function, like RetroSynth, for example, and then set the glide amount in the synth plugin itself. On some plugins, this also might be called legato or portamento. But this is limited to plugins that have this functionality, and it's just not as simple to control as it is in FL Studio. It would be applied to all of the notes in the track unless you automate it on and off. And in FL Studio, you can create slides just on specific MIDI notes. Before we continue on with the video, I've got a free gift just for you. A topic that causes a lot of confusion in Logic Pro are buses. So I've created the definitive guide to buses in Logic Pro. In this comprehensive video guide, you'll learn what buses are, how to use them, and advanced busing techniques. We start with the very basics and go all the way through some pretty advanced stuff. And I truly believe there's something in this video for everyone. So hit the link in the description box below the like button and download your free copy today. Another very simple but amazingly smart idea you all mentioned is the ability to reorder tracks in the mixer window. As it stands now, you can only reorder tracks in the main window by clicking and dragging on the track headers. And the mixer window then always reflects the order that we set in the main window. But why does it only work in this one direction? It would be great if we could reorder tracks in both the main window and the mixer window. It would even be next level if we could choose whether or not these views are linked to each other, so we could have different orders in each window if we desired. But that's probably asking too much. Next up, a simple way to split a stereo track into two mono tracks. Another one that's like, why can't we do this? This is a classic Pro Tools feature where you could just right click on a track and choose split into mono, and it automatically decouples the left and right channels in a stereo track and puts them into two mono channels panned hard left and right. Super simple, super useful. The only way to do this in Logic Pro right now is to duplicate the stereo track. Then on the channel strip of the first track, click and hold on the stereo icon next to the input and change it to left only. Then do the same thing for the second track and change it to right only. Then you can hard pan the two tracks. The only problem is, other than it being a bit laborious, is that the waveforms don't update to show that they are now in mono. They are playing as two mono tracks, but they still look like two stereo tracks. It's really confusing. Finally, a great idea that was presented is the ability to detect the key of any imported audio file, something akin to a software like Mixed In Key. Of course, Logic can detect the tempo of an imported audio file by using the adapt tempo function, but sussing out the key of an audio file, it's a bit trickier. You could use flex pitch and look at the notes that the part is playing and try to match those up to the key that they fall into, but this takes a little bit of guesswork and doesn't really work for more complicated harmonic material. You could of course do it the old-fashioned way, by ear. A great skill to have for sure, but not always the quickest way to go about things. A simple detect key signature function in the right-click menu on an audio region would be an awesome addition. And one final bonus wish, simply because I cannot believe I didn't think to add it to the original video. It's a process that I use on almost every single mix, and it is a darn shame there is not a Logic stock plugin for it. Dynamic EQ. Sorry, but multipressor just ain't cutting it for me. But if you're looking to dive into the world of dynamic EQ without ponying up for one of the more expensive options, I can highly recommend the Tokyo Dawn Labs Nova Parallel Dynamic Equalizer. It's a long name, but a great 4-band digital EQ with full dynamic EQ control. It even has attack and release controls on each dynamic band, which some of the more expensive options, looking at you FabFilter, don't have. And best part, it's completely free. All right, those were the most requested features to be added to Logic Pro according to you. I found all of your ideas really interesting, and there were lots of features that I had never thought of. Lots of them are features from other DAWs that I just had no idea about. But now that I do, I would love to see them implemented into the next version of Logic Pro. It's been really fun to learn from you all and to engage with you in this lively conversation. And hey, let's keep the conversation going in the comment section below this video. Did your idea make this list? What other features would you like to see implemented into Logic Pro? Drop a comment and let me know. Hopefully someone at Apple is listening and will take our ideas into consideration. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you at the studio next time. Thanks.